Thank you, Carol. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County. My name is Hank Woolston. Today I'll be your service leader. A warm welcome to all in here and out there, everyone, everywhere. Please ensure that your electronic devices are silenced, shut off, whatever. And if you have any difficulty hearing during the course of the day, this morning, let me know by signaling me or something, and Tom can do some magic with the system. First time here for anybody, or the first time in a long while. It's our custom here at UUFDC to invite you to stand and introduce yourself. Gives us an opportunity to get to know you, however briefly that may be. And then please join us after the service in the gathering room. We have a cafe clutch with beverages, victuals, and good conversation. And please remember to sign the guest book so we know who's been here. We are pleased that the Reverend Karen Sandberg has once again agreed to visit with us, to talk with us. Karen is a Unitarian Universalist minister and a retired hospice chaplain. She was recently joined in retirement by her husband and now looks forward to shared times together. She speaks monthly at UU congregations about sacred lessons that her patients have taught her, or puzzling about the challenges of being human in a rather challenging and difficult world. So far, retirement's been a masterclass in finding joy. She hikes, bicycles, tends bees, is learning the ukulele. Why?
I don't know. I'm not
Why? And she volunteers for Planned Parenthood and is a masterful storyteller. As we've learned from her past visits, life is good. But life is also challenging. Anger lies just beneath the surface. Truth is harder and harder to discern and differentiate from deception. Despair is in the air. Today, Karen's talk, entitled "How Do We Fight Without Fighting Each Other?" seeks to address the subterranean blues bonding us. I look forward to her remarks. I'll now light the chalice with words by one of my favorites, Robert Frost, poet, New England poet and rural philosopher, who said essentially many things, but one of my favorites is, in 3 words, please.
Did you have the visitors introduce themselves?
No, thank you for that. But that's coming up. That's coming up. Okay, that's coming up. Wasn't originally, but now it's coming up. Okay. So I will go ahead and light the chalice with words from Robert Frost, who said, in 3 words, just 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. Now it's time for me to invite people to stand up, and our guests and so forth. So please, if we have some guests who'd like to stand up and be recognized, please stand up. Anybody? Please.
It's been a while since I've been here, but I'm Karen Warsh. It's been a while since I've been here. I'm Karen Warsh. My parents were good friends of UU for a while, and I'm just back for a very brief visit from St. Paul. So happy to be back.
Welcome. Good to see you. Anyone else? Okay. This is the time that we allot for announcements. And so we invite anybody who has an announcement they'd like to share to raise your hand. You'll be recognized. The mic will find you, and share with us the announcement that you think is important to share with us. Any announcements? Hey, Bob, how are you?
Hi, thanks.
I was asked to let everybody know, if it isn't on your radar, tomorrow evening at 6:30, and I'm just looking here. Sorry, I don't want the right information. The Miller Art Museum is screening the movie Gratitude Revealed. If you haven't seen that yet, it's pretty great. And yeah, Monday, August 21st at 6:30 p.m. At the Miller Art Museum. So check that out. Thank you.
What's it about?
I think it's a lot of maybe what we're going to talk about today, finding gratitude in a
Okay.
challenging
Okay.
time.
Thank you. Anyone else with an announcement? Yes, Buttons.
For anyone who knows us, we have celebrated 40 years anniversary this past week.
Super.
Hi. So I just want to get you to put things on your calendar here if you are so inclined. The Wisconsin UU State Action Network is having a strategy gathering in Madison on September 30th to put together strategies for getting out the vote in 2024. We'll be joined by State Senator Kelda Roys, who is a member of the First Unitarian Society of Madison, and some other distinguished guests. And our hope is to get this campaign launched early so that we can have a vital and vibrant election in 2024. Hope you can make it. Let me know.
I have a suspicion it will be a vibrant election. Please stand if able and join in the singing of hymn number 170. We are a gentle and angry people. This hymn, by the way, was published in 1979, and it was in the wake of the assassination of Harvey Milk in California, San Francisco, who was the first openly gay elected official statewide in the state of California. Also, in the fifth verse, it says we are all in the, or rather it says we are gay and straight together. It says that in your hymnal. The author of this piece, Holly Neer, has substituted we are all in this together to be more inclusive even than the previous words. So when you get to that point in the fifth verse, remember we are all in this together. Should have just asked you to remain standing. Because we will now recite the unison affirmation followed by the doxology. Okay, we gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. That sums up hope and faithfulness, that peace, goodwill, on earth be sown, in every land on earth is known. Joy lifts the heart, lifts the spirit. Concern weighs them down. Sharing within a community of friends raises a joy to greater heights, or provides balm and lessens the weighty burden of concern. If you have a joy or a concern that you'd like to share, we hope you'll share it. Again, raising your hand and the mic will find you. Please note that this service is live streamed to the World Wide Web, and be sensitive to the mention of names if you haven't discussed with somebody that you might mention their situation today. So again, please raise your hand. The microphone will find you and share with us your joy or concern. We have a quiet group today, but that's okay. We'll move on to the reading. Words from Naomi Klein, a Canadian writer, social activist, and filmmaker, who said, "Politics hates a vacuum. If it isn't filled with hope, someone will fill it with fear." We'll move to the offertory. We rely on your generosity, of course, of both spirit and shekel. As the offering plate passes before you, please give accordingly, generously. Be mindful that you may also make contributions via our website, uuftc.org, where we have a tab that says Donate Now. And if this is your first time visiting with us, please let your presence with us here today be your gift. Thank you again. The world may be filled with tumult and turbulence and rancor and resentment, but in all of that, our thoughts can offer silence and solace. So let your thoughts now quietly take you wherever they may, and take only you.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's always fun to be here. I always feel like I'm coming home a little bit when I come to Door County, so thank you for having me. Our reading is The Hill We Climb by past United States Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we care, a sea we must wave. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet, the dawn is ours. Before we knew it, somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we're far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We're striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll be forever tied together victorious. Not because we will never again know defeat, not because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we are to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in the bridges we've made. That is the promise to glade. The hill we climb, if only we dare. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, the history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour. But within it, we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while we once asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A country that's bruised, but whole, benevolent, but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain, if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So Let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. Every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states, and we will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover. And every known nook of our nation and every corner called our country, our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge, battered and yet still beautiful. When day comes and we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid, the new dawn blooms as we free it, for there's always light. If we're only brave enough to see it, if we're only brave enough to be it. So we're coming into another presidential election season, November 2024. Truth be told, I'm not sure I have the emotional bandwidth to survive this next year. How about you? The last one practically killed me. It felt like we got so angry and defensive. We lost our sense of decency and respect towards one another. It felt like an actual battle with stakes too high to even fathom. Each side was fighting for what they believed in and what was best for our country. Our divisions were like deep trenches we could not and would not dare cross. And for some of us, it felt like we kind of got there, that we won, that sanity, slightly boring sanity, felt a bit grounding as it rained in the White House once again. But the battle never really stopped, did it? It continued to brew and fester, slowly being stirred and heated up by the news media. And there was still that sticky outrage that both political parties could never completely wash off their hands. And now, as we walk into another election season, folks are even more concerned than ever about the state of the democracy in our nation. And so here we go again. Thomas Edsall, a New York Times opinion contributor, says that divisions between Democrats and Republicans have expanded far beyond the traditional fault lines that we always knew existed, that were based on race or religion, education or gender. Nowadays, he says, we find ourselves polarized by the latest dog whistle. What is patriotism? Who are the real patriots? What is nationalism? And these very words hold very different meanings for each side. Political beliefs now reflect deeply held worldviews about how the world ought to be, challenging traditional ways of doing things on one hand, and then putting the brakes on change on the other hand. Edsall says that political partisans now look across the aisle at each other and absolutely do not understand their opponents and how they can possibly see the world as they do. And I suspect many of us feel the same. We look at our neighbors' political signs with disbelief. We used to like the Johnsons, but now we think differently about them as they fly their flag. At family gatherings, some of us work very hard to avoid the topics of politics. We quietly move the wine bottles away from those with more threatening or differing opinions than us, just trying to keep the peace. And when everyone goes home at the end of the day, you turn to your partner and mutter, how could my family hold to some of those thoughts? We were raised in the same household. And maybe I've just shared too much. Maybe this isn't what happens at your house, but believe me, it can happen at mine. Often as I stand before you on a Sunday, I'm really just up here talking to myself. But I don't know about you. I am tired of fighting. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of picking sides and pointing fingers. I've spoken on this before, but if I'm honest, all my previous words haven't really helped me to find an answer that is giving me any sense of peace about this either. And so here I go again, taking another stab at this, at sorting out the divisions within our country. As we get closer and closer to the election in 2024, I wonder, how will I keep going? How will I hold what I know to be true and still be kind and loving to those around me that hold to something completely different? I needed to find an answer, another way of approaching all this. And then it hit me. What if I just stop fighting? Now, don't get me wrong, I'll still support the candidate that I believe in. I'll still put signs in my yard. I'll offer financial support. I'll volunteer. I'll write postcards. I'll encourage people to vote. But what if I stop putting my energy and attention towards what looks to be an immovable object? Folks who are just as sold on their political beliefs and their party as I am on mine. In fact, the more I think about it, how dare I suggest anything else? Recently, I read this by writer and California poet laureate Denishu Lameras, and she says, I'm thinking about the way you walk down a crowded aisle and people will pull their legs in to let you go by. Or how strangers will say, bless you, when someone sneezes, a leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we're really saying. And sometimes when you spill lemons at the grocery store, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly, we do not want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee and say thank you to the person who gave it to us and have them smile back at us. For the waitress to call us honey when she puts down the bowl of clam chowder. For the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. To shovel our neighbor's walk just because we still can. We have so little of each other now. So far from tribe and fire, only these brief moments of exchange with each other. But what if they are the true dwelling of the holy? These fleeting temples that we make with each other when we say, here, take my seat. No, you go first. I like your hat. Please let me repeat these marvelous words once again. What if these brief social exchanges, what if they are the true dwelling of the holy, these fleeting temples that we can make together? Just hold that in your heart for a few seconds. Oh my goodness, these words slap me upside my head. If I hold these words to be true, I can be kind and respectful to others who think differently than me. I don't need to label them with my unbending stereotypes of who they think they are or my fevered imaginings of why they are the way they are. Instead, I can wish them a nice day, offer them a smile and a compliment, and maybe, just maybe, they'll do the same for me. Maybe we just put down our swords. And perhaps that's how I will. Maybe that's how we'll get through this upcoming election. Is anyone else here watching the Hulu TV series, The Bear? Oh, I see a couple. It's a really powerful, engaging show that's drawn me in. It's a complicated story about a family who had a beloved brother who ran a very divey sandwich shop in Chicago. He shocks everyone by committing suicide. And he leaves the restaurant to his brother, who is actually a world-renowned chef. The characters are deeply wounded by their life stories, but still they somehow find a way into a sense of family together. One character, Richie, is particularly difficult to like. He believes he knows best. He yells, he mocks, he cusses profusely at anyone who challenges him. I'm sure we all know somebody like this. New York Times columnist David French writes about this TV show. The chaos and woundedness of the characters reminded him of one of his favorite biblical passages in the book of Isaiah. The prophet Isaiah envisions the coming Messiah, and he declares, "A bruised reed he will not break. A faintly burning wick he will not quench." David French compares the character Richie to be the very definition of a bruised reed. He's someone who's hurting, someone who pushes everyone away so they can't see his inner pain. He says it's easy to love those who present with vulnerability, but it's harder to love those who manifest their pain with rage and snarls. David French compares this to our political atmosphere now. He says, "I've seen how we've become a nation of bruised reeds, busy with the task of purposely breaking one another. We see the other's rage, but we fail to see the pain that caused it." I began to wonder about that pain. I suspect it's a loss of power. It's a shift into things that are just not understandable to some. I know while I was in seminary, I learned that many evangelicals will hang on to even the most punishing of beliefs. Because if what they hold to be true about the Bible in one instance is not true, then what else might not be true? For some, it's better to shore up the walls of separation than to knock down all those supports of one's faith. And I can understand that. Many of us had to go through that as we became Unitarians. But when we fail to really see other people's pain, we exclude the very people we need to include. Our staunch divisions these days make accepting one another seem impossible. It's easier, and it actually feels even more rational sometimes, to lash back, to inflict even greater wounds. But over this time, we see that that isn't working either. Our earlier reading by Amanda Gorman said, "And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another." I know from my career as a hospice chaplain that people do not do or believe things in a vacuum. There's always a reason for someone's behavior, good or bad. We're all wounded, hurting, or seeking ways to make ourselves feel better, and maybe our way to cope is not everyone else's way to cope. But what if we stop focusing on the negative aspects of everything and focus instead on the humanity that we all share? Here, take my seat. No, you go first. I like your hat. This type of shift calls for us to see the other as one of us. This shift also calls for us to find a certain level of optimism or gratitude. My family says I'm a Pollyanna. I'm always trying to find gratitude and goodness wherever I can. And truth be told, it's a coping mechanism. I can't bear to think that humankind is cruel or purposely hateful. Choosing to be positive acts as a flotation device for me when things are crumbling around me and the water is rising. I decided to look into what some other optimists are doing during this time, and I found some comfort in their practices. Let me share some of their ways of coping. I know I will mindfully be adding some of their practices into mine. Yershia Shani, she's founder of a nonprofit in India that works on gender discrimination, says, when I see systems change so slowly, when I talk to the young girls that I support, I find sometimes that not much has changed in all these decades. Of course, I'm overwhelmed. Sometimes it seems futile. So to keep my sanity, I began a personal affirmation practice. After my walk each morning, I come back and I sit and face the sun and I say some Vedic chants. These chants invoke the goodness of the universe to protect and bless everything and every person that exists. And along with that, I say out loud a set of affirmations. One is that I deeply love and accept myself. Some days it feels true. Other days it's harder to claim, but I do it anyway. Another one is that I focus on the forces of goodness, that they are taking care of the universe. And I believe it restores my faith and it restores my feeling of well-being. She says, I think it helps. It helps me anyway. And that's a shift. That's a start. Film director Ava DuVernay says, don't let the negative narrative change you. You must change the narrative. She doesn't believe that all these problems are happening to us, but instead they are happening for us. Rather than seeing it as a problem, she likes to see it as something to work with, as something to create something new out of. She chooses to see hardships as a possibility to shift and pivot. An invitation to participate and to move forwards, not backwards. Looking back at all the racial reckoning and the growth and work of the Black Lives Matter movement that we've gone through in the last years, she says, in reflection, she felt that something horrible had to happen to change and activate us all, to demand dignity for one another in new ways. And she's right. Through those protests and those battles, we have seen laws have changed. Police and communities are being held accountable for deaths and injustices that they've caused. There's no longer a free pass for policing authority. A monument's been declared for Emmett Till. That's certainly a change. And although it can feel like we've gone backwards in terms of racism in our country, we have taken some baby steps forward. This doesn't mean we're failing. It doesn't mean we're losing. It seems we're always looking at some giant scoreboard in which our political parties are either winning or losing. And the game clock is ticking loudly during every 4-year reign of each political party's president. But the reality is we are moving forward. Amanda Gordman said in our reading, we aren't striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose. Perfect is impossible. And purpose, well, that's always malleable and changing all the time, as it should be. So yes, we need to keep working towards what we value. We need to keep fighting for what we believe in to be true and good. But today I implore you, I implore myself, put down your sword. Let's stop fighting against each other. Let's go of the rage and instead be more tender with one another and look underneath that bluster to learn about the pain that caused it. And then talk about that and walk into that with your Uncle Gary or your sister Shelley at the next holiday gathering. And then share your pain too. We come together more when we understand where we are coming from. Let me end with this story. There were 2 brothers who lived on adjoining farms, and they fell into conflict. It was the first serious rift after 40 years of farming side by side, sharing machinery and trading labor and goods without a hitch. Then their long collaboration fell apart. It began with a small difference of opinion. and it grew into a major difference that both felt could not be mended. Finally, it exploded into bitter words, defiant actions, and followed by weeks and weeks of silence. One day there was a knock on the older brother's door. He opened it to find a man with a carpenter's toolbox. "I'm looking for a few days' work," he said. "Perhaps you have a few small jobs I could help you with here and there." "Yes," said the brother. "I do have a job for you. Look across that creek at that farm over there. That's my neighbor. In fact, he's my younger brother. Last week, there was a meadow between us, and he took a bulldozer to the river levee, and now there's a creek between us. Pretty sure he did that to spite me, but I'm going to give him one better. See that pile of lumber over by the barn? I want you to build me a fence, an 8-foot fence, so I don't have to see his place or his face ever again," said the older brother. The man said, "Yes, sir, I think I understand the situation. Show me the nails and the post hole digger, and I'll be able to do a job that'll please you." The older brother had to go into town, so he helped the man get all the materials ready, and then he left, and he was gone for the entire day. The man worked hard all day, measuring, sawing, and hammering. When the older brother came home at the end of the day, the man had just about finished the job. The farmer's eyes opened wide, and his jaw dropped. There was no fence at all. Instead, there was a bridge that stretched from one side of the creek to the other. It was a fine piece of work, and suddenly his neighbor, the younger brother, came walking across his land. "You're quite the fellow to build this bridge after all I've said and done," he said with remorse. The two brothers stood at the end of the bridge and then walked to the middle. After standing there speechless, the two saw the senselessness of their division and reached out their arms to embrace. Poet laureate Amanda Gorman says, "So while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? For there is always light, if we're only brave enough to see it, if we're only brave enough to be it. So be that light. Offer kindness. Lift up those true dwellings of the holy in the sacred everyday temples we create with one another, and lay down your sword. Here, take my seat. No, you go first. I like your hat. May it be so."
Thank you, Karen. Lots to think about and do. If everybody would please stand, and if willing and able, of course, and join in the singing of hymn 160, "Far Too Long by Fear Divided." Please be seated. I want to extinguish the chalice with words spoken by Rodney King back in 1992. I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we all get along? Following the postlude, please join us in the gathering room for coffee and conversation and victuals. After about 15 minutes, the verger will again ring the chimes, and that'll signal coming back here those that want to for a talk back with Karen, which will last about 20 to 30 minutes or so. Please do join us in both settings, the gathering room for conversation and more conversation here with Karen.